In the autumn of 1995, a psychologist sat a young man down and told him a story about his own childhood. When he was 5 years old, she said, he wandered away from his family inside a crowded shopping mall. He was lost for a long time. He cried. Eventually, an elderly stranger found him and walked him back to his frightened parents. The young man listened, and then slowly he began to remember it. The panic, the forest of strange legs, the old man's flannel shirt. He remembered all of it, in detail. None of it had ever happened. This is a false memory, not a slip, not forgetting. A complete, vivid, emotional recollection of an event that never once touched your life. The kind you would swear to, under oath, with your hand raised. By the end of this, you will understand exactly how one is built. And then you will understand something far more uncomfortable, that somewhere inside the story of your own life, this has already been done to you. The woman who proved it is named Elizabeth Loftus. She was born in 1944 in Los Angeles, and she became a cognitive psychologist at the University of Washington at a time when the courts treated human memory as something close to sacred. The logic was simple. Memory was a recording. A witness watched an event, the brain filed it away, and later you press play and out came the truth. On the strength of that belief, a single person pointing across a courtroom and saying, "That is the man," could end another person's life. Decades later, the true cost of that faith would become measurable. Of the hundreds of wrongful convictions in the United States that were eventually overturned by DNA evidence, nearly 7 in 10, about 69%, had been built, at least in part, on a confident witness who pointed at the wrong face. Mistaken memory was not a rare glitch in the system. It was the single leading cause of sending innocent people to prison. Loftus did not trust the recording. She suspected it could be edited after the fact. And she suspected something worse, and that the very act of asking someone about a memory could quietly rewrite it. In 1974, with her colleague John Palmer, she ran the experiment that started everything. She showed people short films of car accidents, then asked them how fast the cars were going. But she changed one word. Some were asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other. Others, when they hit each other. That single verb moved the numbers. The people who heard the word smashed estimated an average of about 40.8 miles per hour. The people who heard the gentler words landed closer to 31.8. One word, and the speed changed. But that was not the dark part. 1 week later, she brought them back and asked one simple question. Did you see any broken glass? There was no broken glass in the film. None. Among the people who had heard the word hit, about 14% said yes anyway. Among the people who had heard the word smashed, that number jumped to 32%. The word had not just shifted an opinion, it had reached back in time and planted glass into a memory that never contained any. Loftus called this the misinformation effect. Feed a person a small piece of false information after an event, and the brain folds it into the original memory smoothly, leaving no seam to find. A stop sign becomes a yield sign. A clean-shaven face grows a mustache. She even found that a single word in the question mattered. Asking, "Did you see the broken headlight?" as if it were already a fact, drew more false yeses than asking, "Did you see a broken headlight?" A leading question from a police officer, a lawyer, a reporter, and the witness now sincerely remembers the detail that was handed to them. They are not lying. That is the horror of it. They believe. But editing a real memory is one thing. Loftus wanted to know if she could do something far more radical. Build the memory of an event that had never happened at all, from nothing. That brings us back to 1995. With Jacqueline Pickrell, she recruited 24 people. For each one, she gathered real childhood stories from a trusted older relative and then slipped one fake story in among the true ones. The day they got lost in a shopping mall. The relative vouched for it. Over a few interviews, the participants were asked to remember a little more each time, and 6 of them did. 6 of 24, 25%, came to remember an event the researchers had invented. Not vaguely. They described the stranger, the fear, the store. They added details no one had ever given them. And when the study ended and they were told the mall memory was fake, some of them argued. They refused to let it go. The fiction had become more real than the truth. Loftus called these rich false memories. We will call it what it feels like. The phantom memory. A recollection with weight and color and feeling, attached to nothing. If that sounds like it only works on quiet, forgettable events, consider what came next. In a later study, Loftus and her colleagues showed people a fake advertisement for Disneyland, one that featured Bugs Bunny. After seeing it, roughly 1 in 3 of them remembered the moment for themselves. They remembered the warmth of it. Some remembered shaking his hand. Some remembered being hugged. With repeated exposure, the figure climbed toward 36%. There is only one problem. Bugs Bunny is a Warner Brothers character. He has never, not once, appeared at Disneyland. He could not have been there, and a third of these people remembered touching him anyway. In the 1990s, this stopped being a laboratory curiosity and walked into people's living rooms. It was the era of recovered memory therapy. Across the country, adults sat in offices and, under gentle, repeated suggestion, began to remember abuse from childhoods they had always described as ordinary. Parents were accused, families were torn in half. People went to prison on the strength of memories that in some cases had been grown the exact same way Loftus grew a shopping mall and a cartoon rabbit. One trusted voice asking the same leading question over and over until the mind built the scene to make the suggestion make sense. Loftus would go on to testify in hundreds of trials, insisting on the one thing nobody in those courtrooms wanted to hear, that certainty is not proof. Here is where the popular version of all this gets it wrong. People hear these studies and reach for something comforting. Memory is a little unreliable, so don't lean on it too hard. That is not the finding. The finding is far more specific and far worse. A false memory does not arrive faded. It is not blurry at the edges. Your mind does not stamp it with a warning label. It comes with the same vividness, the same emotion, the same total certainty as a memory of something that actually happened. From the inside, there is no test you can run to tell the two apart. That is what Loftus's work really revealed. Not that we forget, but that confidence has almost nothing to do with accuracy. The witness who is most certain is not the witness who is most correct. Worse still, the certainty tends to grow. The more a false memory is recalled and retold, the more confident a person becomes in it. The conviction hardens at the very moment the link to reality is dissolving. You cannot feel the difference between remembering and inventing because there is no difference to feel. The sensation is identical. And if you believe your intelligence or your good memory protects you, consider the one person on earth who should have been immune. When Elizabeth Loftus was 14, in 1959, her mother drowned in a swimming pool. Decades later, at a family gathering for an uncle's 90th birthday, that uncle told her something she had never known, that she, Elizabeth, had been the one to find her mother's body. She told him no. It was her aunt. He was certain. He insisted. And so she went home, and she began to wonder, and within days she could see it. Her mother in a nightgown, floating face down. The flashing lights of the police cars, a fireman lowering an oxygen mask over her own young, panicked face. Then her brother called. The uncle had been wrong. It was her Aunt Pearl who found the body exactly as Elizabeth had always known. The world's foremost expert on false memory had grown a vivid one of the worst day of her life, in a matter of days. So think about the story your family always tells about you, the one from before you were old enough to truly remember. Are you remembering that day, or are you remembering the photograph of it and the way they have retold it at the dinner table for 30 years? Think about the last argument where you were absolutely sure of what the other person said. You can hear them saying it right now. That certainty you feel is the same certainty those 6 people felt about a mall they were never lost in. The same certainty a third of those people felt about a rabbit they never touched. Find an old friend and compare your memories of the same night years later, and you will often discover 2 confident, detailed, incompatible versions of a single event, with no way, from the inside, to know which of you is the rememberer and which is the inventor. You do not remember your life. You remember the last time you remembered it. Each time you reach back, you take the memory out, you handle it, you rewrite a little of it without noticing, and you put it back changed, convinced it was always that way. Your past is not a recording you are playing. It is a story you keep telling. And the most frightening thing science has learned about that story is that you are not a reliable narrator of your own life. You never were.